Hey, and welcome back to the East County Prep Football Report. It's week 5 of the high school football season with Dave Dickens. I'm Ramon Scott. Dave, well, the hot mess that is the Grossmont Hills League will have to battle through that non-league schedule for a few more weeks. We're going to start this week's show with the red-hot Grossmont Valley League as they finally commence a championship season. You know, last spring, we did award the tri-championship to 3 teams, Monte Vista, Santana, and El Capitan, but those championships between both the Hills League and the Valley League and several leagues throughout the county did not recognize league championships, so it's great to get a championship season together, and it officially starts this Friday night. We'll talk about the Grossmont Hills League and all of their woes later in the show, but I want to start with the Grossmont Valley League, unless you have any comments about last Friday night's action.
Well, I mean, we can get into it as they come up, but we all know that last week, I mean, I guess one word suffices for all 3 teams in the Hills as far as Helix, Grossmont, Granite Hills, and unfortunately, it was a shellacking last week.
Okay, yeah.
But I think that they all have an opportunity to climb back into it this week, and we'll get more in depth on that shortly. But I think that I think that all 3 teams are. I think they just need to clean up the small things, and especially turnover battles in particular. But we'll get into that, and even a monumental loss, unfortunately, for the Highlanders last week to the Dons. But all credit due to the Dons. I mean, they are a phenomenal club. I mean, that's just plain and simple. But,
okay, I'll rant later. You're starting to get my blood boiling. It was a rough Friday night for Grossmont Hills League fans like myself. So I'll complain, I'll rant, I'll cry later on. Let's talk about the winning teams of the Grossmont Conference, right? And we're going to start in the Grossmont Valley League with contenders, pretenders, spoilers. We got them all in the Valley League, Dave. Everybody's going to have a chance to win a couple of ball games in our great Valley League. And let's start off with what I think is going to be an interesting matchup, Dave. Of course, West Hills and I'll mention right now Santana, both 4-0, 2 of the 8 undefeated teams in the section so far, Dave. The Wolfpack are going to host the Mount Miguel Matadors, and although we've only seen the Matadors twice, we just saw them really shine for the first time last Friday night in a victory, and they're going to be going into West Hills, Dave, where they're going to be a pretty considerable underdog, but I'm going to give the Matadors a chance. What do you see here?
Well, I mean, you just said it right there. Is definitely an underdog, uncontested underdog against the Wolfpack. I'm going to say that to start off, I mean, last week against the Crawford Colts, Mount Miguel senior Ruben Hernandez passed for 2 touchdowns in the first half, rushed for 2 in the second half to lead the Matadors to victory last Friday over the winless Crawford Colts. Now, let's keep in mind that they did play the Colts. And their season of woes continues. Also, look out for wide receiver Jeremiah Castillo, sophomore receiver, 60-yard touchdown last week, 4 passes caught for 73 yards and 3 tackles. As you know, the Matadors have to go both ways due to the amount of players on their squad. And just a couple of more on the docket for them. And they had some pass breakups on defense. And, you know, after pitching a shutout to the tune of Marvin Jacobs, who had a sack, Angel Cortez forced a fumble. The Matadors played 2 games so far, as you mentioned before, with the opening loss to Patrick Henry, which Patrick Henry is on a roll anyway this season. Yeah. However, they have a very tall task going up against the really red hot West Hills Wolfpack. I mean, you couldn't ask for a taller task after beating the Colts. I mean, you got Braden Oberg leading the pack, and the senior signal caller who put up 129 passing yards against Escondido last week with lack of practice. Pretty much just did a walkthrough, so he didn't do any physical work until he actually went on the field at game time. He also had 2 touchdowns, and in 4 games has 8 touchdowns. And I want to mention this stat especially: 8 touchdowns and no picks. So let it be known that this offense is very crafty, very particular, and they're all about being very careful in the play selection on that offense. Wanted to mention also Dylan Snyder took up a lot of the slack as Max Conaway has been sidelined for the 2nd week in a row. After talking to Coach Ash Friday, he was not 100% certain, but he definitely was alluding to Max being back this week. But again, I want to make sure that Dylan Snyder got his as he stepped in and had a pretty phenomenal game last week. And what we saw again with the pack, and according to Ash as well, is we saw them struggle early on defense like they did earlier on against Imperial earlier on in the season. So they once again, though, they did clean it up. They came out, regrouped, and came out in the second half and just took care of business.
Yeah, David, I think the West Hills coaching staff knows better than not to have this team completely focused for Mount Miguel, right? After all, despite winning the last 4 games in this series, just harken back a little bit, just a couple of years ago, really, 3 of the games between these 2 teams were very, very close. 2 of them were decided by just 1 point. And those were games I think that West Hills was expected to win at the time, and what we were classifying as very close ball games. Now, this one, just given the circumstances, looks to be a greater margin right now. But Mount Miguel, we finally got a chance to see them. You mentioned the win over Crawford. I want to mention, Ruben Hernandez was the man, right? He's a man among boys, literally. He is a leader out there. I would follow this guy. And he had 2 touchdown passes, 2 rushing scores. So I thought Mount Miguel looked terrific. I know they were playing Crawford. I understand. You mentioned Jeremiah Castillo, Dave. I think he's going to be a guy that we're going to be hearing a lot about in the weeks to come. And, you mentioned, I'll just say it, no interceptions for Oberg so far. You better watch out for Jeremiah Castillo of the Matadors. I know that West Hills is very cautious in the way they do things. They can get this job done, even if Conaway was not to be full steam ahead in his sessions this week. West Hills should be able to get this done, but I like what I see right now in Mount Miguel, so I want to give them a chance. They ran the ball very, very well. I love the way that Hernandez credited his offensive line with doing the job. It's a different Mount Miguel appearance. Kind of the same as when they had JD, in fact, that he was running, but there's not any drop back really occurring in this one. It's play designation with him, with his running back. And that's how the Matadors are back to getting it done. So they can control their own destiny to a certain extent by limiting those turnovers. And we know it's hard to get the ball away from West Hills. West Hills, they were terrific in that game, Dave, against Escondido. And you mentioned Snyder stepping up offensively. So Pack leads this one, Dave, all-time series 14-6. The Wolfpack, interestingly, Dave, 21-10 all-time in league openers, and I've got West Hills winning this one by 2 or 3 scores. I'll call it 17 points, maybe more.
Yeah, I got them up by a little more. I learned my lesson the first week, so I'm definitely calling out West Hills to win 35-7.
Okay, I want to see the Matadors get in the end zone twice, keep this in a ball game. All right, Dave, let's keep talking about undefeated teams in the Grossmont Valley League in the East County, right? The Santana Sultans. They are 4-0. They play an exciting brand of football. They make no mistake, maybe too exciting for their fans and their families, but they just keep rolling with that win over Sweetwater last week, 28-21. Dave, they led early. Sweetwater came back. Nick Ledger, 220 yards passing. He had a pair of scores on that final drive. Man, Santana, they got a big break. They got a big break in that game when Sweetwater was trying to kill the ball, and Santana was willing to even let them drive 50. They'd have to drive 50 yards, but they could converted on that turnover and got that touchdown, Dave. Santana this week, entertaining Valhalla.
Yeah, I mean, the Norsemen really, they have a tall task. They're coming out of the gate with they had that first win against Hilltop, 14-8, and have since gone 0-3, losing to Granite 62-0, San Pasquale 48-6, and then last week blanked by a mighty Mount Carmel team 38-0. The Norsemen have not playing any patsies either, though. I mean, their schedule has been very difficult. I think one of the more difficult schedules in the Valley League. So, I mean, they got another tall order with the Surging Sultans on the east side of Santee. And, when the Sultans have been down, they've been the comeback kids, too. So don't ever count them out. They could be down by 3 or 4 scores, and you never know what you're going to get in that second half. The Norsemen have scored in 2 of their 4 games and only 14 points total on the season. They need to get that offense jump-started, and they need to do it in a hurry. Last week, one of the highlights for the Norsemen, senior Harmon Shamo had a pick and had 3 tackles. Sophomore Dominic Shaw also had 5 tackles and an assisted tackle. They're playing a little bit of defense, but like I said, they're playing some overwhelmingly big teams that score big and have a lot of big offense. And as you mentioned before, I mean, Santana, they've had their comebacks. They should be probably seeing the services of their starting running back. Luke Nash should be hopefully coming back this week. But let's look at the bright side. Braden Brashears is shared a majority of the carries along with Ethan Wright. They both had a touchdown apiece. 11 carries for 71 yards for Ethan Wright last week. Also 10 catches, 88 yards, and 1 touchdown for the sure-handed Dylan Anderson. And then you had Logan Jordan on defense. I just want to mention that not only the 5 tackles, but 5 sacks for that defense that's been very stingy with their opponents. I'm looking this week. If they don't manage to turn the ball over, although they've been winning even when they've turned the ball over 5 times, I'm looking this one. I just think that Valhalla has too tall of an order. Even if they play perfect ball, this defense is very difficult for them to score on. And again, their running game is outstanding. And like you mentioned before, too, Ledger has been on fire behind center.
Right, Dave. Yeah, go ahead. I want to hear more about Nick.
So, I mean, Nick, let's not forget at the beginning of the week or the beginning of the year, he hadn't even played quarterback.
Right. Okay. That's what I wanted you to say, because remember we talked to Nick, he's been a quarterback in the system and kind of groomed for the situation. And we really haven't got to see him really. He was banged up a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And Wright had to play 1 game. But look at the numbers that he put up and connecting. He was his pass to Anderson, who's also a hot player right now. Right after that fumble of Sweetwater, it's almost like they were too conservative, and they knew they had to kill some clock, and there was probably an awkwardness to the situation. If Santana was really playing a relaxed D and said, you just can't waltz the guy into the end zone. But they fumbled the handoff awkwardly. Santana got it back right away. Ledger hit Anderson, 38-yard touchdown, and just sent the Sultans into a frenzy, and they win that game. So just a great job by Santana. They're a great story right now. And Wright, Dave, you mentioned Ethan Wright, and he's been, we've seen kind of the role of that player. Ethan Wright is that guy on Santana. We've seen over the last few issues of the Sultans, the guy that kind of does it all for the team, and that's Wright. And not only that, he's Mr. Quotable, right? I mean, he said to you after the game, crazy calls, crazy plays, crazy accidents, and it was a crazy game and a crazy win. And the Sultans, when you win those type of games, that's magic, baby. And the Sultans, are in position to win this game comfortably. I agree with what you say about Valhalla. They did, have some moments. They had to play a lot of defense, right? Mount Carmel overwhelmed them in the beginning of the game. Mount Carmel, you talked about the opponents that Valhalla is playing. No one, if you talk about a team, yes, there are better teams in the county than Mount Carmel, even though Mount Carmel is also one of those undefeated teams, but no team has risen more quickly right now in the county, I think, than Mount Carmel, and that's with Coach Westling all the way. So also watch out, Valhalla Junior AJ Cornthwaite. He's the most explosive player, I think, on the Norsemen. Valhalla leads the series 5-2, but Santana's grabbed the last two meetings. But Dave, just last spring, these two teams played in Santee. Sultans were banged up, admittedly. Final score: Santana 21, Valhalla 13. So, well, I've got Santana winning this one, Dave. I think I wrote down the Sultans by probably 3 touchdowns, maybe more.
Yeah, I got Santana scoring 35-7. I think that's pretty accurate. Hopefully, Valhalla gets into the end zone once or maybe even twice. But it's a tall order with that huge defense. And then that explosive offense has got just too many tools in the tool shed for Valhalla to stop. So
yeah, we're not burying Valhalla, Dave. They're going to have their chance to win games against other Valley League teams, and maybe one of these top teams, they get them at home in the right spot. Like I said, just 21-13 last spring. Valhalla went in there and played a great game against Santana.
This could be their time to shine, and at least make it respectable, maybe, and pull off a crazy upset. But look by the numbers and just how Santana's been playing. Even if they're playing from behind, I just don't really see it happening. Minus something crazier happening, like Mr. Wright said. I mean, if something really crazy happens this week, maybe the ball bounces the other way. But I don't really see that happening. So
yeah,
Santana handled it.
Sultans, Sweetwater did get its running game on track. Sweetwater has had a rough start record-wise, but they did run the ball pretty well in the game against the Sultans, pretty darn well. So,
Santana can give up the yards, but when it gets into the red zone, they are pretty stingy. So that's going to be the key.
Indeed. Hey, Dave, I don't know if you caught the news, but El Capitan head coach Ron Berner, he won the award for the Chargers Coach of the Week in the county following his team's performance. He was nominated, then won a vote, but following the 21-12 upset victory of previously unbeaten Rancho Buena Vista last Friday night. I mean, it was a matchup of two surging teams that are really on the rise. The Vaqueros, Dave, were down multiple starters on both sides of the line, but the coaching staff made adjustments and promotions in order to kind of corral the Longhorns' leading rusher, the county's leading rusher last week, and the Yoakley brothers got it done as well. Dave, El Capitan, they're in the poll this week, number 17 on the rise, and Coach Berner, he won the Chargers Coach of the Year back in 2014, but that's when they were the San Diego Chargers.
Right.
They still are.
And that's also, let's not forget, that was Brad Cagle's big year behind center as a Vaquero. Of course, he went on to Grossmont and to play for the Chargers community college-wise. Or should I say, four-year college. Where was that city? I even forget where those Chargers are. Anyhow, El Cap goes up there, and it makes sense. They go up there and knock off
Briarcliff.
Rancho Buena Vista that had been number 18. So it makes sense. They go to 17. Got the win without the 4 key starters, as you mentioned, at Alex Bay, and also Xavier Pace rather. He he's their starting running back, but at the same time, um, I think that they've just gathered the troops and said, you know what, you guys you're gonna fill in and you are gonna do well, and all they gave up is 12 points, and like you mentioned before, to one of the top rushers in the county, and Savvy Oakley on offense had 8 completions to his brother for an 108 yards.
Wow.
And that was to Antoine Yoakley, including a 50-yard catch and score. In the second quarter, Savvy's also rushed for a touchdown in the second quarter, and the Vaqueros also picked off the attempted 2-point conversion by the Longhorns. Junior Angel Diaz also scored on an 8-yard TD run.
Oh, nice. Shout out Angel's mom, Anna. Long time coworker of mine. Good job, Angel.
Excellent. And
Angel's mom.
With those two out, though, we got offensive linemen playing on the defensive line. And with that being said, Shun Hazel had 7 tackles, 2 passes, and also junior Austin Cordero had a pick, 2 tackles, and defended a pass as well. And then sophomore Julian May had 4.5 tackles. But
he was kind of I think he was the Xavier P. If I had, and May is a good player and talented player too. When I see the guys and how they played, Dave, I see guys that kind of filled those roles, and I see Julian May. He was kind of Xavier Peace in that game.
Fair enough. And I mean, we're talking about how great El Cap has played, and especially their adjustments on defense in particular we've seen, but also on the offense, as we've mentioned about Peace being out as well. But how about the Braves last week? How about the Braves? I was there. I got to see the Braves turn in. The last 3 weeks have been trying to get it done. They've improved each week. I mean, really, the only blowout was that early game. They had to shake off the rust against Mission Bay, and let's not forget, Mission Bay is a excellent team, and they gave Mountain Empire a hard time, and we'll get into that later. But El Cajon Valley comes back. Now, granted, Claremont is, I think, I read one of the lower-rated teams in the county right now, but that doesn't take anything away of how great El Cajon Valley did do against them after 2 weeks in a row, coming within 10 points and just coming up so short and really hammering down. I mean, that run game has been fantastic. That offensive line has been fantastic. And in particular, who shined last week was our good buddy Cal Gordon, who rushed for, that's right, 230 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. The Braves amassed 400 yards in total offense, including 101 yards passing. Get this from senior Jacobs, who passed and here's the thing, he passed for 3 touchdowns, but he only threw 4 passes. So, but he was a great leader that game, and they're a really tight unit, cheering each other on the whole time. And they were a real quick-paced offense. They didn't waste too much time at the line, and they were getting these plays off pretty quickly. And I can't say enough about that offensive line too. and the way they were blocking for Kal-El. And just a phenomenal athlete, catching, running. I think he's going to do great things with this El Cajon Valley. I think he's the building block of the El Cajon Valley Braves. But I mean, nice job, Coach Nick Osborne and Coach Clifton. I mean, they've had a great game plan like I mentioned, for the last couple of weeks, and for their game plan to come full circle, and for the Braves to have a huge win over Claremont on both sides of the ball too, because their defense was playing great. Even their special teams. The onside kick right after they scored and recovering their own onside kick. They had the pedal to metal from the first drive and the second drive and the third drive. I mean, these guys were on fire. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see El Cajon Valley with their fans smiling, their fans cheering, the coaches smiling. I mean, really got to a point. They scored so much they were actually a little lackadaisical, if you will. But I mean, what do you do when you're up by that much against a Chieftain team that was really just blown out and shellacked?
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned the Braves offensive line led by seniors Jesse Higuera, Enrique Hernandez, pounding out those yards. And don't forget Jaheim Mendenhall. He scored, right? How about, Dave, 6 takeaways for the Braves? Gordon, Demarion White, Hernandez, Luis Hernandez had one, Enrique had one. They all recovered fumbles. In addition to you mentioned also Paris Dixon had a touchdown and an interception. So the Braves, it's easy for Ron Berner, right, Dave, and the coaches at El Cap, those award-winning coaches, they could just show them the film of last week's game and show them exactly what they need to do to stop what the Braves did. The Braves, they looked great. So I want them to see, I want to drill it in El Capitan's minds what they're up against at all cylinders, right? Look, we know El Capitan's going to win this game, Dave. Let's not pull any punches. But the Braves, El Cap is in a situation where they're coming in with a lot of injuries. Okay, they have a pretty big roster still. Guys stepped up, but a lot of guys are going to see the field this week. It wouldn't surprise me if El Capitan maybe wants to make sure that this game, is close. Look, every defense wants to post a shutout. I understand that as well. But, this game could go the distance, meaning, no, you know what? Maybe no running clock. Maybe, El Capitan could be in control that much that they can dictate the pace and the tempo as long as they don't make any mistakes. Any team's susceptible. And the way the Braves are playing, anybody can capitalize on scores and make quick hits and make it an uncomfortable night. And we know that El Capitan has the, bigger and stronger team, but the Braves right now, they're definitely, on a bit of a high. I just want to give you one interesting note, Dave, that back these two teams played a league opener. Oh, I don't know, might have been 10 or 11 years ago, and the Braves won. So anything can happen in that one. I mean, this has been a dominant series for El Cap, and I think El Cap's going to, win this game, and I'll just call it by, 4 or 5 scores, but it's going to be a fun night out there. See these guys.
After seeing what I saw last week and seeing El Cap this year as well, and after talking to Coach Berner past couple of weeks too, I honestly think he and Coach McDade are not going to go into pre-stadium and be overconfident, if you will. I think that they will recognize that the Braves are a league team, that they are on, as you mentioned before, on a high right now. They're believing in themselves. They've gotten better each week since that first week. I mean, toss out that first week, and this is an ever-improving team each week that they hit the field. I agree. El Cap is going to have the upper hand, but beware. The Vaqueros need to beware that you do make too many mistakes, and this is a team, this El Cajon Valley Braves team, will capitalize on any mistakes that are made. But I got it a little closer. I think these two teams are going to battle a bit. with El Cap having the upper hand. I'm going to take El Cap 24-13.
Okay, great. Hey, that's great. Yeah, here's the thing, Dave, and I don't look. I'm telling you that El Cap, everyone gets, a lot of people are going to play in this game, and when people who are maybe a second teamer or even a third teamer, they get a chance to be in the game, they're going hard, no doubt about it. So, and the Braves. Here's the thing about it, right, Dave? I understand that the Braves are shorthanded, but all their best personnel is going to be in there all game. Let's hope that everybody stays healthy.
That's what I was going to mention real quickly too. Is the reason I do have faith in the Braves they will make it a game is because their starters are in at all times, and that they have been playing like that and been conditioned for games that with these kind of implications. So, I mean, let's not count them out, and that's why I think it's going to be a little closer than people expect.
Okay. Well, I'll clean up what I was saying here. This is the 51st meeting between these two teams, and the last Braves win was in a league opener. The Braves won 29-21, and it was in 2007. So 14 years ago was the last time that the Braves won, and it was a league opener. So just passing that note along. Okay.
Who was the quarterback then?
In 2007?
Yeah.
You tell me.
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, geez. All right, trivia time later, Dave. Dave, we've spent 30 minutes on the Grossmont Hills League, on the Grossmont Valley League because of the league openers and the great games. We'll whip through these Hills League games, right? It's time to get serious here, Dave. At one point, Dave, at halftime last week, the four teams in the Grossmont Hills League were down 122-0. So I don't know, I'm not saying it was an all-time low for this league, an all-time low point, but right now, they're all playing great games. They're playing phenomenal teams. I get that, but that disturbed me. And for Grossmont to get the only points. Anyways, let's talk about the highest ranked team in the East County, the 10th ranked Helix Highlanders. Maybe you've heard of them, Dave. They're going to be taking on the Saints in what I like to call the Gauntlet Series, the Saints, the Dons, and Helix. Dave, the Highlanders come in this one, with that 2-1 record. The Saints are 1-3. These teams meet every year with always a great ball game. What do you see?
Well, I mean, I'll start with that. The last time these two met, and let's say first and foremost, I mean, the Saints are down a little bit at 1-3 this year. Helix,
I don't buy it.
And Helix coming out of the gate pretty hot, but then they ran into unfortunately, they ran into the Dons last week.
Yeah. Let you talk about it. Tell me, give me all the gory details, brother.
But the last time these two teams met was in last year's spring matchup, in which Helix lost this one 21-13. Scotty's scored in the first quarter, and in the fourth, at the time behind center, a different quarterback in the spring, which was Richard Colmenero. He was a senior signal caller for the Saints. In the spring, had 73 yards, only 73 yards, and turned in one touchdown. This year for the Saints, senior Kyle Herbert is taking the snaps, and he was held to 43 yards passing last week by the stingy Steel Canyon Cougars through the air. So, but I'm getting to what they have to be more careful of. It's not so much the quarterback for the Saints, but senior Isaiah Presley last week versus Steel had 21 carries for 199 yards. That ground game led by Isaiah Presley is very dangerous and has kept the Saints in some of these games. And he had 3 touchdowns against the Cougars. Safe to say where the rock will be placed in whose hands, averaging 131 yards per game. Defensively, Jake Bolin, who is averaging 12 tackles per game, will lead the defense. It could be a rather quick game as Helix will stick to the ground as well, featuring their bowling ball in Chris Washington, of course. I think he's going to get multiple carries for sure, probably a majority. He's averaging 159 yards per game, and it could be interesting with Helix suffering their worst loss in school history last week, 52-0 to the Cathedral Catholic Dons.
Yeah.
And it's their last shutout. Interestingly enough, also was in 2006, the opener against Oceanside, 27-0. Interestingly, I was also seeing that not only Jesse, the sophomore, but Elijah Ortiz also took a few snaps last week. Didn't see any big numbers. I know that Jesse passed for 118 yards. And I don't know. I'm not real sure on this one. I think it's going to be a lot closer than the records indicate. I think it's going to be a very quickly played game due to the run game on both squads. I don't think either one of them are going to go to the air quite as often due to the success that they have on the ground. Both have some decent offensive lines, but who knows? I don't know a whole lot about Ortiz so far, so it's hard to really gauge what he's going to do. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary or crazy numbers come out of him last week, so I don't know if they're going to play half and half, if they're going to go with the two quarterbacks, which they have done in the past as far as Helix is concerned. But I think that this is going to be a very quickly played game. I wouldn't be surprised if it was over in 2 hours. But with that being said, I'm gonna go with Helix. A narrow win, 20-14. I think it's going to be a lower scoring affair as well.
Yeah, good. Well, I was hoping you would take care of all those tidbits about you kind of alluded to it in the open too about the worst loss in school history. I took a bunch of grief in my DMs and all that. I'm the one that made the tweet giving out all that information, beating that previous 50-0 loss or whatever. You talk about that loss to Oceanside, snapping that streak, look that up, 187 games, whatever it was, right? So they're playing the Cathedral Catholic Dons, who've now moved into the number one position appropriately in the poll. They're already there in the ratings. So, Cathedral's taking on De La Salle this week, so they're awesome. And, Helix has played a tough schedule, but so have the Saints, right? Saints have played a tough schedule too, and that's why they're 1-3. Now, interesting that the Saints did just dump Steel Canyon 27-0. That does certainly, raise my eyebrow a little bit, what's left of it, and, makes me contemplate whether or not Helix will win this game. They're at home and they should win. So, look, Washington will carry the load. I think the situation with the quarterbacks is fine at this point. I think Jesse will be in there a little bit more, given what we saw last week. 9 receivers caught passes for the Highlanders, but unfortunately, 3 Dons caught passes too, Dave. So, Puka Noah, thought he looked pretty good. Like to see more from him on the defensive side as well. So, look, Cathedral led 42-0. Right, Dave, last week, wasn't too concerned. Kind of stopped watching, I kind of stopped watching all the Hills games at that point. But Saints, even though they're out of the poll, they're still 15th in the computer rankings. They're playing one of the top 10 schedules right now. So you mentioned Presley. Hey, don't forget, they have one of the top recruits in the whole section. I'm talking about Saints in Oregon commit Grayson Halton. So he had a monster game against the Cougars as well. I think the Highlanders, for all the grief that they got this week, and now that they're down at number 10, I got them as underrated. Highlanders are going to win this one by a couple of points on the Saints. Helix, they lead the series 6-3 this century. And these guys have played in some CIF games too, some important games. We know they always play quite a bit. So I'm going with Helix. They better win. All right, Dave, a little bit of breaking news here. I think all the Granite Hills family knows that this game is at Hilltop High, but anybody who's checking on the internet schedules, right? I think all of them, Cal Preps, Max Preps, I think even the Scorebook Live, I'm not sure. All of them say that the game is at Otay. Look, even the graphics wrong. This is Otay versus Granite Hills at Hilltop High. Dave, talk about this game. I'll fix the graphic.
Well, I mean, the real key, I think, in this one for Granite Hills is they have to limit the turnovers. I mean, and I want to say that the game that they played against Madison, it almost looked like a carbon copy, unfortunately for my Eagles, of what they had the week before against Madison. And
we said they couldn't turn it over. We implored it. We begged them.
And Eastlake, they're a good team.
Number 9 now in the poll.
And at the time they were number 14, and Granite at the time was number 16. So I expected a little more out of my Eagles, especially defensively. And I was hopeful that we stopped throwing interceptions. And I can't say it enough that and I know I haven't talked to Coach Cobbs about this recently, but I know that he would say the same thing. They need to clean up the turnovers, and without the turnovers in this last game against Eastlake, they win the game, possibly. They still got to score some points, but these free passes.
And the Eagles ran the ball very well also last week.
Yeah, and I want to briefly just talk about not just the bad news on the field, but also, as we know, around the whole United States, the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 tragedy. And wanted to mention, and I didn't get a hold of Joaquin Thomas Jr., but I wanted to get his take on it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a hold of him. But we know that the family of Eagles defensive back, Joaquin Thomas Jr., what a great surprise, a return of their relative Stephanie Thomas from her current military commitment, arriving 2 hours prior to the kickoff. And then at halftime, the introduction of the homecoming court, Mikey Birkenbach, a defensive back from Granite Hills, as the king. And, you have all that great camaraderie, at the half. You think, okay, maybe the Eagles are going to regroup. They're happy with, and especially Joaquin Thomas Jr. Having a family. I can't even imagine. I've tried to put myself in the seats, and
ran out there.
I can't even imagine that would be the spark for me. That would be the spark for me to go make a couple more plays on defense, on offense, score a couple of touchdowns. Not for lack of effort, Joaquin. So if you are taking a look at this, not for lack of effort, because he is an outstanding player. And
it was the three turnovers, Dave. The quick turnovers, results in like 3 scores. It's 31. It's.
Believe me, as upset as you were about the Scotties and their performance, I was equally as disgruntled about my Eagles just repeating their mistakes when I know that they are a much better squad than that. And I think that after it's happened 2 times, as they say, 3rd time's a charm. So hopefully this week, and it's another tall order playing Otay Ranch.
Yes.
But this is where you can turn it around. This is where you can turn it around. You can take all this frustration of and I'm sure it's been drilled into their head in the last this week on the practice field. And I mean, they limit the turnovers. I think that, they can get into the end zone, score a couple of quick touchdowns, take command of the game. And I think that Nico has to limit the free passes, throwing to the other guys. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I think that they are capable, and I think that they have the talent to do so, as they showed in the first 2 weeks. But this is rain or shine this week.
Yeah.
For Grand Hill.
Like I said, Dave, just to clarify, and I'm sure, everybody, I'm a big high school football fan. I try to follow every team, every game, every player. I just found out about the location of this game. Like, we delayed the start of the show to find out. So hopefully anybody wants to go to this game can realize it's at Hilltop High. I believe it was originally scheduled as a Otay Ranch home game. It may have been rescheduled for Granite Hills sometime prior to the season. I believe when we talked to Granite Hills and asked them if they had 5 straight home games, they might have either confirmed, didn't know, or maybe we weren't clear, but I wasn't sure. All the schedules said the game was at Otay Ranch, and I'm like, wait a minute. I thought, Dave, you said, and then now we find out it's at Hilltop High. So obviously it's an Otay Ranch home game. Their facility has been unplayable, I believe, this season. So they moved to a school that's close to Otay Ranch down there in the South Bay, it looks like. So sounds like it was a great night, Dave, for all the Eagles, except when the game was going on. So as self-deprecating as I was reading off all those pitiful records about futility on the Highlanders, I have to be fair. That was the first time that the Eagles were shut out in 94 games. That dates back nearly 10 years. So I think Granite Hills is in for another tough game. We haven't seen Otay Ranch, Dave, in 2 weeks. Remember, though, they lost to Helix 29-14. So if we can draw any comparison there, Dave.
Well, that's what I'm hopeful of, is that the Eagles, like I said, they don't create their own turnovers as far as shooting themselves in the foot. Yet I think that the defense creates their own opportunities. Last week, linebacker Carter Braun led the club with 9 tackles. He was also on the homecoming court. And then we've always seen great things in defensive lineman Zach Burton. And we even mentioned earlier in the week, or last week, I should say, a great swim move that he was playing against the Titans blockers for his first quarter sack. So I think we need to double up those type of plays on the defense, create opportunities. And maybe that's the key, is to create those shorter fields for that offense and take the pressure off of the signal caller and maybe create some more rushing lanes. But I think we need to be a little creative now as far as the Eagles are concerned. And I'm sure that's exactly what Coach Cobbs is doing. But it is a really tough matchup. And I think being on a neutral field favors the Eagles a smidge. But I'm going to say this one here, after seeing the last 2 weeks, I think they do clean it up, and I'm gonna pick the Eagles this week over Otay by 7.
Okay, Dave. Yeah, I'm gonna go with. Oh boy, this is a real tough one. Otay has Brian Rudden, a good quarterback. He's thrown for over 500 yards this season, and Otay did get a 19-14 road win at Madison, and we've seen Madison against our teams already. So I'm going to go with I'm going to put the pressure on. Nobody's listening to me, but I'm going to go with Otay Ranch to win this one by a point. Put some, maybe the Eagles can surprise. They've got to. If they don't turn it over, they can win. I'm telling that. Obviously, they know that. We all know that. The turnovers can't. People talk about turnovers in previews. It really was almost ridiculous how many times they turned it over in that game. Okay, Dave. Look, talk about tough assignments, right? Steel Canyon's had a tough assignment pretty much all year, and now they're going to have to take on the number 3 Lincoln Hornets. Lincoln is number 3 in the polls, but number 2 in the power ratings. And, we've already seen Lincoln against one of our teams already. They're just terrific. Dave, Lincoln lost last to Los Alamitos. They're a very highly ranked team. So they're kind of like in the cathedral boat. They have a loss, but they are elite right there. They're definitely one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the entire county. And anytime the Cougars get these teams at home, you give them a chance because of that great defense and Major Givens.
Well, I think the biggest key is, look, Lincoln, they played Monte Vista.
Not comparable.
And, for a variety of reasons, and we'll get into that when we go over the Monte Vista matchup this week. But, we don't know ahead of time what kind of team we're going to have and what kind of shape we're going to be in. Because, we pick these matchups 2 years in advance. So we don't know. I mean, you can have a complete turnover of guys transferring out, guys being injured and out for the season. I mean, all of the above. But I think that, you mentioned it, Cougars at home, that's always going to give them a chance. And I think year in and year out, they have a decent defensive core. But this is really a tall order. And even with Major Givens on the ground, I think that they're going to have to establish that ground game with him very early to open up some type of play action. And I think that if you're going to contend with the Lincoln team that's very speedy, I think that it's going to have to be a good balance, or even a majority of you're going to have to improve your passing game. You're going to just have to. You're going to have to open up those lanes. And I think that there's going to be some tough decisions made in order to contend with just a tremendous group of athletes from Lincoln High. It's from A to Z. There's no weak links on that Lincoln squad.
Yeah, they've got some top recruits, no doubt about it. And they also have Nathan Acevedo, don't forget. And but you know what? Steel Canyon's Matthew Barton, the quarterback, just a sophomore, I think he had maybe his best game against Saints, 151 yards last week. So they didn't crack the scoreboard. Might be tough again to crack the scoreboard. At home, I think they can get a score or 2. If they get 2 scores, you know what? With that defense, they could stay in this game. But I have to have Lincoln here by at least 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I got Lincoln by 3 touchdowns or more. It's just I'd like to see Steele put something together offensively and keep it close, but it's a very tall order.
Yeah, Steele trailed 21-0 at halftime in that game to Saints last week as part of the Grossmont Hills disaster that occurred. And hey, here's the team that scored the 6 points, right, Dave, last week, and they did it against a tough opponent. So, but you know what? It doesn't get any easier for the Grossmont Foothillers when they host the Cajon Cowboys. Dave, Cajon is coming to town to take on our Foothillers. Give credit. We know it was kind of out of necessity, some of these matchups, but give the Foothillers credit for going out and taking on these tough opponents under new head coach Chris Holmes. It's definitely a change from the past. Sometimes you can grow and learn and get better from playing very, very tough teams. Cajon is ranked, I want to say 33rd, 35th, somewhere like that in the southern section. So they're not the same type of Cajon team that had Jaden Daniels that beat Helix 34-3 3 years ago, but they're still the Cajon Cowboys. They're coming in with an undefeated record out of the Citrus Belt.
Let's also not forget, this is the same Foothillers team. Coach Holmes, they rang out 2 wins right out of the gate, beating Sweetwater, but let's not forget that they did beat a great El Camino team, a Wildcat team, in a shocker. So, I mean, and they did, as you before mentioned, they chose to go all out on this schedule. To fill the schedule, they had to go outside of the county, and they had to choose some pretty tough opponents. And Cajon, as you mentioned before, too, is undefeated. And Cajon is coming in with running back senior Freddie Fletcher is averaging 103 yards per game on the ground, while sophomore Martinez Miles Jr. is averaging 232 passing yards per game.
Oh boy.
So a very tough order already. And defensively, senior Jacob Pham is averaging 12.5 tackles per game. The Cowboys traveled from San Bernardino to battle the Hillers at home, who started the season, as I mentioned before, 2-0 with big wins versus Sweetwater and an upset versus El Camino. The Hillers went on the road now back-to-back games these last 2 weeks. Powerhouse team that is actually 4-0 now in the for Warren High School, the team from Downey. And then they traveled to the North County to battle Rancho Bernardo last week, who was 2-2, only amassing, as you had mentioned before, 6 points on offense, losing 36-6, with the only score coming late in the third quarter. And to make matters worse, they missed the extra point just to complete the disaster for all three teams. And the Hillers also suffered a block punt, alluding to a 12-yard TD run, a fumble on their own 17. It was basically the Freddie Franchina show, scored on the next play. Quarterback Trenton Giles, however, is the leading rusher, believe it or not, for the Hillers as well, averaging 19.5 yards per game.
Oh boy.
He's also averaging, I think he definitely can improve this, 165.5 passing yards per game. The Hillers have a tall order. Again, they just have another stellar team in Cajon, and I'm hoping for better, but I think I'm going to go with Cajon 28-14.
Yeah, I think so, Dave, by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Brendan Sanders scored the Hillers touchdown. He had the 6 points representing the Grossmont Hills League. So, Dave, want to send our thoughts to the Foothiller family and the Griffin family. Wide receiver Jamie Van was injured, unfortunately, in an accident and has an injured back and a very serious injury just learned over the last couple of hours. So our thoughts out to all of them. Dave, I think for Grossmont, look, like I said, this is not the same overwhelming Cajon team, but we're just playing such a tough schedule. Nothing wrong. Rancho Bernardo, you mentioned how good a team they are with Frankie Franchise running the ball. And look, I think once Grossmont gets into league play, they've fallen to the, fourth team again, I believe. No, Steel Canyon's still fourth in the ratings, but Grossmont needs something to build their confidence as they work towards the league season. So I have Cajon winning this one. Yeah. Okay, Dave. Want to move on to some other action here. How about the Christian Patriots? They're going to be traveling to take on Central Union. The Patriots, Dave, a heartbreaking loss last week. Rather serious injury to quarterback Jake Davila in the middle of the game. But Christian, they kind of rallied the troops a little bit and continued to be very, very competitive. And I'm not saying that they nearly pulled it out, but they were still in the game in the second half as they suffered their first defeat of the season against rival Santa Fe Christian in a game that was played at Claremont High School.
Well, yeah, I mean, first and foremost, Christian's got to travel to El Centro, so they already have to travel. And the checking the weather should be pretty good heat box, and including I'm sure it'll be 10 degrees warmer on the field, but it should be 100 degrees by game time. Cramping can be a definite high probability. Hopefully, they have enough potassium and water to alleviate that. But yeah, like I said, the forecast looks at 100 degrees. They need to stay hydrated. Anyway, yeah, as you mentioned, Junior Jake Davila had a scary moment last week after a late hit to his back, and he was taken off the field. I didn't get that detail, but I'm sure on a flat board just to stabilize that neck, just as a precaution after any back injury. But I did talk to his dad, Robert Davila, that also told me that, believe it or not, they were getting ready to be checked out, and I think that was around, I want to say 11 o'clock Friday night. He said he'd already been released, and he was doing well. And when I asked first thing, I said, is he going to be sitting out? No, he's going to be playing ball. And knowing this kid, knowing this family, I am 100% confident in exactly what he said and the resiliency of this junior classman and signal caller for the Patriots. Definitely a heck of a baller. Let's mention also, I mean, he did have a great game against Santa Fe Christian, 145 yards passing, missed basically a whole quarter, really.
Yeah.
13 for 20 for 1 yard, for one touchdown. Rushing, he was 12 carries for 57 yards. I do want to mention freshman Joshua Herbert was 4 of 7 for 38 yards and a rushing touchdown. Leaving that's got to say a lot about Joshua's character to be a freshman and called on to relieve a top-tiered quarterback like you have, and to go in there and be asked to take on a team like the Santa Fe Christian team in a battle like that is really something. It's got to say a lot about Joshua's character. So I wanted to also make sure he gets his shout out for, just being such a poised young man and going in.
That was a great job. Looks like the Patriots are in good hands. Davila's, like you said, he's only a junior, but the lefty Herbert looks like they're in good hands once Davila's gone. But that,
Well, no, and that's that. I think that makes Coach Mitchell even. But I don't think he's surprised. I mean, the talent, it never ends on this squad. I've been fortunate to view them and see them in their greatest moment. But I wanted to mention, and I know you see it, and if you watch the highlight of this crazy play, if you even breathe or blink an eye, you will miss it. And that's when the craziest score ever on, I think it was 1 minute into the second quarter, Ryan De Los Reyes scored when a completed pass by Davila to Joey Merritt was stripped by Santa Fe Christian, bounced once on the ground directly into De Los Reyes' hands, who was already headed towards the end zone anyway. And it was like almost like a magnetic, it was an amazing play. And like I said, if you don't watch, if you actually blink, you have to watch it more than once because you won't see it.
You're right. I did miss it, Dave. When I looked at it the first 10 times, because it was such a cool play, I thought the ball shot directly to De Los Reyes. I didn't see it hit the ground, and I submitted the play, and it got one of the national plays of the week on our ScoreStream app. And if anyone doesn't know about our ScoreStream app, we basically publish the scores in real time. If you're at your game on Friday night and you want to check the scores, just have the score stream app downloaded on your phone. I promise you it's faster than those other, the official one, the Max one. I guarantee you our scores are faster. It's a crowdsourced app, and they're doing them, right from the games. And I saw the play, and I thought it went right to him, but it actually bounced. But it was such a cool play. It was an important play in the game, Dave. I thought that the Patriots did a fine job. You mentioned the job that Davila did, and you credited Herbert. He came in. Jake was knocked from the game, and Herbert came in and led him on a scoring drive on that possession. So I think that was a great sign as well. But Santa Fe Christian, maybe they were a slightly the better team, even if Jake was. It obviously would have been a tight game down the finish. We know Christian is a clutch team.
Well, and I wanted to also mention, Joey Merritt has just been a tremendous on offense and defense. Caught 6 passes for 79 yards. And one of my favorites, I think he's one of the fastest guys in the league. J.C. Gustin had 7 catches for 66 yards. And then that Christian defense had 2 sacks. Junior Brady Bingham, 5 tackles, and 1 for loss. Junior Brady Deerlip for two tackles for a loss and a forced fumble for the Pats. And then wanted to touch briefly also and not forget about this either. Aaron Shablowski had 8.5 tackles, or I should say he's averaging 8.5 tackles a game. But as far as Central Union, they lost last week to Vista 42-35 in a barn burner. Junior Charlie Sullivan carried 14 times for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Junior Damian Rodriguez carried the ball 5 times for 35 yards and was 10 of 20 passing for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. They are, So I'm going to give the passing. I don't know. I think it looks like they're similar quarterbacks opposite of each other. So this will be a really interesting matchup. I think that the 1-3 record does not suffice to the talent on the Central Union squad from El Centro. But I am going to say that Christian goes over there and that they will get a road win, but I'm going to say by a field goal.
Yeah, Dave, I guess we can't really make any caveats on the prediction, right? I mean, if Jake Davila is not playing, I think it could be a much closer game. I hear what you're saying about what his dad said, and his dad is totally honest and upfront with us. He's a big cheerleader of ours, and we're a big cheerleader of the Patriots and Davila. So I trust what he said, and I think Davila will be back. If he could play, he's going to play. So it just sounded like such a serious injury to be taken off by ambulance, and to be back the next week. I mean, it was not a concussion, so there's not a problem there. It was a back injury. So if you're feeling fine, that should be fine. I fell on my hip yesterday in my softball game, and I'm lucky it's not broken, but I could probably go out there and play tonight.
Well, knowing what I know, and having as being an EMT prior, I can honestly say, since it isn't a concussion or head injury, it is a back injury. But as long as he passed all the tests as far as, no nerve damage in the spine and didn't pinch anything off, I mean, he's able to move all of his limbs. And I think that if he got clearance from the doctor and the hospital and to be released that quickly under his own power, I would not be surprised. And also that he is a big-time gamer.
Yeah,
I would not
he
be
does not
surprised.
want to miss any games, right?
Oh no, this kid, there's just no way. And interestingly enough, if you recall too, and it's not a good thing, but former quarterback Gabe Krug had some back issues also last season, and he played with some severe pain through some back injury last year, so or in the spring, I should say. But I think that we'll probably be seeing him in action. Do I think that it changes the narrative that much? Not really, because I think that the surrounded talent around Herbert. I mean, he's a little green, but hey, he did the job. He didn't hurt the Patriots. I'll tell you that much. But Jake does get the start. I'm definitely I'm going to take the Patriots on the road with a big win by 3.
Yeah, and again, tough game when you're going out there. You're coming off a loss if you don't have your quarterback. But it sounds like he's going to play. I appreciate all your information about Central. I agree with you on all that. Dave, how has Christian done when they've traveled east? We don't, we know Christian's traveled some. They don't really travel a lot, but they've certainly made several trips out to the IV. They're just 1-1 record at Central, but Dave, get this: they're a combined 17-5 all time traveling east, if you will, if you don't count Julian. So you can see some of these games were back when we were playing, when Christian was even back at their lower levels than this. But they 2-0 at Vincent Memorial, 2-0 at Brawley, 5-2 at Mountain Empire, 1-1 at Imperial. So pretty good success when Christian has traveled east, and I got them. I got them winning by a touchdown, at least. All right, Dave. The Monte Vista Monarchs are going to be back in action, and they're going to be taking a team from the Imperial Valley, the Imperial Tigers, who we have seen already this season, Dave. We saw Imperial so far. They played West Hills, remember, at West Hills in the season opener. Of course, the Wolfpack won that game. Dave, you were at Monte Vista's last game. Can they beat Imperial? I imagine this is going to be a very, very close game.
I think from what I've seen, if they can manage to not get the penalties, and same medicine that I think I spoke of that Granite Hill should take, and that's the no turnover clause. I think that if Monte Vista can retain the ball, they can score when they need to score. It's the little things with them as well, as Coach Yamamoto and I talked about after their loss to Patrick Henry, similar to the other Spring Valley team of Mount McGill.
Yeah.
And let's not take anything away from Patrick Henry, because they are a very talented team. However, Monte Vista did shoot themselves in the foot. When it was, I believe it was a first and goal situation. They went 3 times, and then on the third and goal, they managed to fumble the snap away, and those are the things that you cannot do.
Yeah. Then they had a pick 6 by Hammond.
Right. And so, I mean, with this one, the defense is pretty decent as far as the number of players. It's a team that's been very short on players this season, more than in quite a few years. Something that Coach Yamamoto has been concerned with from day one, as he doesn't like to have so many players going both ways. It's the fatigue, it's the injury possibilities. I mean, I saw it that night. It wasn't big injuries, but you could see some of the players on, whether they be on the line, whether it be the quarterback limping a little bit after some bumps and bruises. It's just going both ways, and we're at pretty much at the halfway point, just about here, and they still got a lot to go, and starting with league plays around the corner for them. But I have also seen this Imperial team, as you mentioned before, and they played decent against the Pack, and again the Pack was making their own mistakes, so they were giving handouts to Imperial, and I think that if Monte Vista rather can keep it together, limit the amount of turnovers or not have any, and create their own, I think that's going to be key, and also establishing their trademark with players like Roby, and I think they established that immediately, and they have a couple of backs, so a good rotation of backs and a decent line, and then I don't know. I think that we might have to open up the playbooks for some passing plays as well.
Dave, did you even see a pass at that game? Monte Vista ran 52 times against Henry.
I believe it was one pass, to be honest, and that was I was there for a half, but I think there was one passing play incomplete in the first half.
Well, Imperial only has, I don't know, they only have like 450 yards of total offense in their 3 games. So to me, it looks like a standard Monte Vista team would have no trouble with Imperial. Monte Vista, we always are going to say, is going to improve, even if we're off to an 0-3 start, unprecedented. We mentioned, Dave, look, we talked about the Grossmont Hills League, and I'm going to pin you down at the end of this show, just to put you on notice right now. You're going to have to pick who's going to win the Grossmont Hills League. Monte Vista is a co-champion, right, of the Hills League right now. Technically, you and I like to count that spring season. They had that big upset of El Capitan, right? Monte Vista, they're still Monte Vista. They're like the defending champs until further notice, right? They've won the last 2 official Grossmont Hills League championships. They're the defending champs, really. And we know that they're going to improve. They should. They better beat Imperial here.
Yeah, and talking to other coaches in the Valley League, I will tell you right now, Coach Estes, Coach Ash, and that's just a recent, anytime I mention Monte Vista, they said they always come around. Don't count them out. I could say verbatim, that's exactly what Coach Ash has said, even though has the upper hand right now at the top of the league. He does always mention, don't count the Monarchs out. They have proven time and time again to come around at the right time when league play starts, and have won, and very recent. So, and as you said, they are, until further notice, league champs. So,
right.
So with that being said, I think this is the most winnable game for the Monarchs as far as non-league play is concerned, and they should do so. I am going to go out on a limb and say that because Monte Vista is at home also, and Imperial has to travel once again to San Diego County, I'm going to say that Monte Vista gets the upper hand by a touchdown.
You've been hanging out on that limb's pretty strong. You've been hanging out there for at least 4 or 5 years, probably even longer, as long as I've known you. But that limb's got to work out the last few seasons. Dave, these 2 teams played an incredible game. We've been on here a long time. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'll put it in the column, but they played just 2 years ago in 2019 at Imperial, and the Tigers won that game 26-25. So I've got Monte Vista edging Imperial in this one by a touchdown. Okay, Dave. Well, things have got to get better here for the Mountain Empire Redhawks following their game against an impressive Mission Bay team last week. They got all they could handle from the Bucks. I think they knew going in, especially without their star player, Larry Clark. Mountain Empire got overmatched by the Bucks. But here they're going to play the Crawford Colts, and Mountain Empire is expected to win this game for sure.
Well, and with that being said about Clark, I did find out later, too, that the prior game against Holtville, he did continue to play with a broken, I want to say a broken wrist.
Wow.
Anyway, he played. He continued to play the second half after he'd already got the initial injury, but they didn't want to overwhelm him, and especially in a game against Mission Bay like that.
Either he didn't know or he didn't want to tell him, right, Dave?
When you're a two-way starting star like that, and you're a majority of the offense and defense, as
Wow.
we've seen before. I mean, to me, that just tells you right there. That speaks volumes about the character of Larry Clark and being a team player. But that's when the doctors have to step in and say, listen, or the trainers should say, listen, we see where you're coming from, but we can't have you risking your body like that. What can I say? I mean, last week, Clash Osborne once again. I mean, the Mission Bay shut the Christian Patriots out of the second half. Granted, they were down by a lot, but they shut them down on defense, and Osborne engineered 2 touchdowns. Scored 14 points against and the starters are still in for Christian. So, and then last week, Clash Osborne again, 393 yards, 5 touchdowns against the Redhawks. Granted, like we said before, Larry Clark was out of the equation. And it was a fractured wrist. So that confirms what I was saying. But
does that make him out? I wonder if he'll make him out for this week, or if he could play with something on that wrist. I mean, he sounds like a player that, I don't know. They put those big clubs on him even at high school ball, don't they, for a star like that?
I would assume.
Larry's a senior, right? He wants to play.
I will get clarification from Van, but I'm pretty sure, knowing him, that'll be because it is a key game for the Mountain Empire to get back to 500.
They might be able to win without him. I mean, Crawford. We saw the game against Mount McGill. You talked about already losing 27-0. They've only scored 14 points, and they've also lost to some familiar teams, Mar Vista and Montgomery,
in which our teams have done pretty well
right?
Against those squads. And I wanted to also mention Nikai Lindholm led the Redhawks against Mission Bay with an interception and 8 tackles on defense. Mountain Empire, an anemic 97 yards of total offense. But again, I can't say enough about seeing Mission Bay twice. That is a tough defense to score against. Senior inside linebacker Pedro Castaneda had 7 tackles for Mountain Empire. I mean, he just reiterated it too, that about all the losses. Last, who else did he have here? I mean, Ricky Prince said, a lot of adversity. Not only Larry Clark being out, but Rodrigo Gonzalez, and Wyatt and Hunter Morgan. So, they had a couple of players step up, but look, this is one I think that's very winnable. Crawford has they haven't impressed me at all with any team that they played of ours, and I think this is where Mountain Empire, with or without Clark, can take advantage at home, and I'm looking for them to beat Crawford by at least 3 touchdowns.
Okay, I've got Mountain Empire winning this one also. I'll just say they're going to win. I say if they have Clark, they're going to win by a couple of touchdowns. If they don't, I got them by about a touchdown or more. I mean, they should beat Crawford. Like you said, Crawford has not won yet. So
I don't see it in the near future either.
Say it again, Dave.
I don't see that happen in the near future as far as Crawford winning.
All right. I'm going to talk about one more game, and then we're going to talk real quick about the Hills League and get out of here. This is a 1.5 hour show. Nobody's watching. Dave, the Foothills Christian Knights are going to try to get their first 11-man win in several years. They're taking on Hoover. The Knights played Army Navy Academy in their first league game last week and lost 27-6, but that was a closer game than when they met in week 1. It was Foothills Christian junior receiver Jaden Gascon, 5 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown. Freshman quarterback Ben Hernandez was 10 of 17. I was looking at the stats, Dave. I didn't see anything about this game, but so I just want to mention senior Hunter Dillon. He had 2 of the Knights' 6 sacks, but I've noticed Army Navy only had 8 other pass attempts, that means Foothills got to the quarterback on almost half of the opponent's dropbacks. I'd need to see some film on that. That sounds quite outstanding. Cameron Brown had an interception for the Knights, and they're going to beat Hoover and get that first win. I've got them by a touchdown. Okay, Dave. Look, Dave, the Grossmont Hills League is going to start, and I've give it the best I can, right? Trying to be honest with our synopsis of the Hills League, of the Valley League. Did I say Hills?
Yeah.
I'll never get it right after all these years. In the Valley League, Dave, look, right now, if you look at the computer ratings, Dave, it's Santana, West Hills, El Capitan. El Capitan, though, is the only team that's receiving votes currently in the media poll. So do you want to rank these teams? Do you want to make a prediction? Do you want to call a tie between these two teams? I'll pick with you, but I don't know if I want to, because it's going to be exciting. And I'm talking about those 3 teams now. I'm not counting out Monta Vista and even Mount McGill to have an effect in the race. We're going to give Monta Vista an outside shot at the championship, right? They really have to turn it around, obviously. Mount McGill, they're still in a spoiler role, but they looked terrific. And like I said, this is the Valley League. Valhalla will have its chance to upset teams as well. Maybe not those top teams, but I talked about just what Valhalla did with Santana in the spring. If either Monta Vista or Valhalla or Mount, they can have a say in this championship race, and also the Braves as well can have a say by pulling off a big upset of one of these teams, Dave. So can you make anybody mad at you and give me the champion of the Grossmont Hills League?
Well, I can tell you right now, I said it at the beginning of the season when I saw the schedule, and when West Hills plays El Cap and when West Hills plays Santana, you really have to go out on that limb, because I'll tell you what, those games are going to be huge, which makes it a little more all that more difficult to select at this point in time. If I had to compare it apples to apples, I would give a slight edge to the West Hills Wolfpack, with an ever so slight over Santana.
And El Cap.
I wouldn't be surprised if it even went to a tie for second place with El Capitan and Santana, with West Hills being the undisputed champion.
Okay, that's a great pick, Dave. It's a great pick because West Hills, if I'm not mistaken, they host both Santana and El Cap this year, right? That's a huge advantage in a championship season. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything, especially the way that those 3 teams have kind of had some upsets over the last couple of years competing for their trophies and bragging rights.
And with the Mayor Cup, and when they are played at the very end of the season. When I saw the schedule, I already saw the writing on the wall. That's why it makes it ever so much more difficult. And that the other league is a mess. So it's.
Well, we're not picking that league yet because they don't play. They play the last 3 weeks of the season. Right? We still got a couple of weeks. Before that, even maybe one of them starts a week early. I don't think so. I don't know. I think it's just whip the last 3 weeks. I should know, but I don't even know who some of these players like on El Cap. I mean, I'm glad you had all those players because I've got 3 rosters of El Cap, and I try to mesh it together, and I still don't have everybody right. I think I might have even. I apologize if I left anybody off of El Cap or called anybody by the wrong name on El Cap, but that's just the way I got three rosters, and I don't really know when I'm watching the game. Some of the I think I got it down. Go ahead.
I await communication on that.
No big deal. I'm just saying. I'm glad you had all those players and their tackles and all of that. I watched I watched that game. That was a great game, man. That was a great game. I watched that game. I haven't gone out to many. Dave, I sit here with NFHS on. I've got like 5 subscriptions to NFHS, like one of my internet friends, and I just put them on all my screens now. It's almost like Red Zone. I kind of want to come on and do Red Zone and just say, "Whoa, touchdown over here, touchdown over there." And I'm glad you're out at the games and getting those great interviews like you had with Khalil Gordon. I'm just procrastinating, Dave, trying to get this show to 90 minutes before I make my prediction. Dave, I wanted to pick West Hills because of the fact that they're playing those 2 games at home. So, look, I want to go on the record as I think that that's a big advantage for West Hills, but I want to pick I kind of want to pick something other than Dave. West Hills to me, and they're the favorite right now if you go by the ratings too. I think maybe the talent on El Capitan. If they stay healthy, I like El Capitan. I'm going to go with El Capitan. But Dave, all it's going to take is one win by one of those 2 teams to knock off West Hills on their home field, right? Talking about when West Hills plays those the other teams in the Valley League. No, when West Hills plays other teams in the Valley League on the road, all it would take is an upset to throw it into, so it's a big league, Dave. You got to go through 6 games.
Unless the injury bug catches them off guard, I just don't see it. They make I'm basing it also on
make mistakes. On
the
least mistakes.
I also, that's what I'm basing it off of also, is the least amount of mistakes made.
And we are not overlooking our Santana Sultans either. I mean, they have that's what's going to make the Valley League race so great. And I think, like I said, I think some of those other games will also be very, very interesting. The Monarchs, the Matador, they're all going to have a shot. The Norse, they're going to have a shot to knock off one of those teams, and that's who the Valley League teams are going to have to look at. Of course, they're going to be pumped and ready for those big championship games, but don't go overlooking those other teams, because next thing you know, you'll be the team that doesn't have the championship come the end of the season. And we talked about that big season finale at West Hills as well. That could come down to that. So I might go to that one. All right, Dave, just a great job. I'm sorry it took 90 minutes, but we had to give the Valley League its due, and we had to tell the Hills League we're going to need to step it up.
They've been put on notice.
Well said. For Dave Dickens, I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you for joining us.